Hello everybody, welcome to the Comic Gary Movie Show. My name is Deshaun, and today I'm here to review Ms. Marvel Episode 2. Now, Ms. Marvel Episode 2 is, honestly, it's just as great as the first episode. I mean, it's like, this thing has been on, like, if the first two episodes are any indicator of the show as a whole, this is gonna end up being the best MCU show. Like, just kind of based off of, because while I hold WandaVision to such high regard, you guys know how much I absolutely love WandaVision. I think it's one of the most creative things. I still think, you know, although this show is doing some very interesting things, but I still think WandaVision is the most creative thing the MCU ever did. It was something that wasn't even in the comics. Like, there are aspects of it that was in the comics, but the whole sitcom angle and all what they did in that show was completely original and completely out of this world. It's such a unique experience, and you know, it was such a unique experience watching it when it was coming out. So WandaVision is still like my top dog, but I have to admit this show is, and I'm starting to think like between this and Hawkeye, because I remember saying I think Hawkeye is like as an entire show together, it's the best. It was the best put together show, and I think there's in this show takes what Hawkeye did and actually takes it to another level, because Hawkeye had flaws, it had a couple flaws. One in turn meaning that, you know, they had a nice pace going, but they couldn't, like, they were battling with the whole movie aspect, because the MCU shows, the one flaw that I will say, the one flaw of the MCU shows that's an ironic flaw is the whole making these as movies, like movies that are just long form aspect. And at times it feels like that. At times, like, it hurts some of the shows. I think particularly like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which I enjoyed the fuck out of. I thought Falcon and the Winter Soldier was great, but I even admit, watching Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I was like, you know what's hurting it is that the whole this is a long form movie aspect, because it just felt like a movie elongated. So somehow it felt like not enough was happening while everything was happening all at the same time, because like they just haven't quite figured out that pacing of doing these shows, because like they want to make these shows be at least MCU quality, so that these characters are going to transfer over, but at the same time they don't want to make these you can tell they don't want to put too much money into these shows, because if these shows are legit just straight up movies, then people will just be like, why don't I just stay home and watch the shows? So this interesting balance they're trying to make, but Hawkeye and Ms. Marvel, in my opinion, and in WandaVision, the thing that makes those shows a bit unique to me, and why those shows like kind of stand out is that they actually feel like long form narrative shows, if that makes any sense. While as a lot of the MCU shows so far have felt like long form movies, I think Hawkeye and Ms. Marvel have done the best job of making their stories feel like actual long form shows, like shows. And you know, and like I said, and it's working to this show's benefit. Like, it feels like a show that just happens to have a Marvel budget, and it's working for it. The characters are still great, and there's a lot that happens in this episode. This episode is going to be very important, and it sets up a shit ton of things. First of all, we find out a lot of people were afraid that Kamala's power were going to come from the bangle, like the on her arm. And, you know, a lot of people were worried about that, because it was like, oh, okay, if it's just a piece of technology, then anyone, because, you know, it's this Ant-Man thing. Some people think that about Ant-Man. They're like, oh, anyone gonna use that technology. And if it was like a piece of technology that anyone can use, then people were gonna be like, well, what makes her so special? Turns out, the bangle just unlocked something that was already inside of her. So, like, she already had something super inside of her, which is not too dissimilar from her original Inhuman origins of the Terrigen Mist unlocking the superpowers inside of her. But instead, they just made the bangle unlock the superpowers inside of her, which is different, but still the same. Like, clearly they're not going to make her an Inhuman. I don't think so. Like, Marvel, it feels like Marvel doesn't really want to touch the Inhumans. I mean, outside of that little cameo from Anson Mount as Black Bolt, I don't think they're gonna do it. You know, like, I think, like, because you gotta remember, the only reason the Inhumans kind of started to pop up in Marvel Comics and whatnot, and like started to become a thing. Like, I mean, the Inhumans have always been a thing. Black Bolt and the Inhumans, Atalan and all that. That's always been a thing. Lockjaw, all of it. It's always been a thing, but they haven't really been that big of a thing. Like, the Inhumans were really a little bit more popular than the Guardians. Like, that's about it. Like, they were a little bit more up than the Guardians. But they were like, with the Guardians of the Galaxy as this group, this thing that's out there that, you know, that's a part of the comic book lore, that get brought up. Sometimes they show up in events. You know, sometimes they have a comic occasionally, but they're not that big of a deal. You know what I mean? And Marvel tried to make them a big deal when they realized when they thought, well, back before they had Fox, you know, because, you know, in the name of synergy, they're like, why are we going to promote the X-Men when we can't make X-Men movies? We can't make X-Men movies. We can't really make X-Men shows. It's like, why the fuck are we promoting the X-Men? We might as and you know, they were like, the MCU were going to use the Inhumans. Like, Kevin Feige had announced an Inhumans movie. Like, I still think about that movie, man. But, you know, like, that was going to happen. And that's where Kamala Khan came from. The only reason Kamala Khan is an Inhuman is because of all this backstage politicking, because they wanted to make basically all the newer heroes Inhumans, because, like, Marvel Studios are going to make the Inhumans a thing in the MCU. They wanted to have a bunch of characters to pick from, and Kamala Khan was the best thing that came out of all of that. But unfortunately, the MCU doesn't really want to touch that, so they had to change her origins a bit. And they really do get a bit more into her family history. This mysterious great-grandmother who apparently did something so bad that she caused shame on her family. Like, her mom doesn't even want to talk about her. Her grandmother doesn't even want to talk about her. Like, no one, and like, she talks to her, the you know, aunties out of her, what is that temple called? Is it a mosque? I always say it incorrectly, so I don't want to be wrong. But she talks to, like, other people in her community, elders of her community, aka the Aluma aunties. But she talks to them about it, and they're spouting off things. But the way they're talking is like they don't really know what the fuck they're talking about. So no one knows what's up with this mysterious auntie. This you know, this bangle. I think it's called a bangle. This bracelet thing is apparently from her, and it unlocked these abilities in her. So who the fuck knows what's going on there? Meanwhile, she's actually getting control of these powers. These powers look really fucking good. The CGI and sound design on her powers sound awesome. Now, they come up with a name for it, Hard Light. And it's like glass. At least that's the sound it makes. Now, that's the sound it makes when someone hits it. When she uses it, it sounds like glass when she's stepping on it. And there's a great sequence where she's stepping down. And it, like, the way they filmed it was so great. Because, like, it was seamless. Like now you know she was probably, like, walking down some actual glass steps. And they just, like, through you know, the magic of editing and movie magic, they just edited out the glass, but they recorded the sound of her walking on the glass steps, but they just edited it out and put the CGI, you know, little platform she makes. By the way, I made a joke earlier on the channel, and I thought it was just funny when I thought about it. I'm like, wow, she's literally a platformer. She's a walking video game platformer. Ironically, she got the inspiration to make the platforms from Crash Bandicoot, which was weird. I was like, wait a minute. But I was like, wait, isn't Crash Bandicoot a Sony character? Did they get permission from Sony to put that in here? No, Crash Bandicoot is not a Sony character. Actually, he's owned by some other company. So, hey, you know, they just had to pay that other company a couple change. You know, they had to pay Sony up the ass for that. But yeah, like she's starting to get the hang of making these little platforms. In my brain, because there's a small little action sequence with these Stark drones, by the way. But in my brain, I was starting to like that's what I do now with the MCU. Whenever a character is introduced and they have cool powers, like when Shang-Chi was introduced, I start imagining them interacting with other characters in the MCU, and I start imagining the battle sequences of like what it would look like. You know what I mean? Like I'm already imagining the sequences in the Marvels and what she's gonna do with Carol Danvers. Like I'm already sort of imagining that because it's a really cool power, because a lot of people are like, oh, it's just Green Lantern, but it really isn't, because Green Lantern's powers are like it just happens. You know what I mean? It always felt like Green Lantern's powers just happen. He just creates this thing. He can fly through space, but it doesn't feel like she can do all that kind of crazy. It's like, yes, she can create constructs, but like hand punches and stuff like that, and make these. But like, she doesn't have a grasp. Maybe season 2, because I'm thinking this show's gonna get a season 2. Maybe by the time season 2 comes around, she'll be doing more Green Lantern-esque things. But from what I've seen in the trailers and what I've seen so far, it doesn't feel like they're gonna push it as far as a Green Lantern ring. It's like she can make constructs, but like stuff like this, and like walk up stuff. It's like, and walk up, make platforms to walk up. But it's really cool. The way they designed it, the way it looks is awesome. Got a shout out to the directors. Another well-directed episode. Another well-shot, well-edited. Some funny bits, particularly with Bruno being real salty about Kamala's new crush. It turns out there's something about him, but if you read the comics, then you would have already known that, actually. But yeah, this episode was wonderful. It was just as great as the first episode. Some funny bits, some new discoveries, intrigue. We got intrigue, dropped information. It sets up something very interesting for the next episode. I can't wait for next week. Anyways, thank you guys for joining the Comic Guy Movie Show. I would give episode 2 of Ms.Marvel 10 out of 10. Anyways, thank you guys again. Please like, subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next one. Goodbye.